My name is Aria. I am an artist working in Portland, Oregon. Today I'm going to talk about Prison of Self, which is my most vulnerable and personal painting. When artists typically talk about their work, there is a format and a method and a canon that is referred to, and often it doesn't get that personal. I'm going to break from that format because this piece, well, first of all, that's not really me. And this piece came out of me as almost a witnessing of what I was going through personally and emotionally and spiritually. And the art was a real integral part of my own healing. And I hope that in sharing my story, it inspires more people to create their way out of difficulties and challenges. To just give you the backstory of how this piece emerged, the impetus or that first impulse that I had to put into paint was a depiction of my darkest moment, that dark night of the soul, where you are at the very bottom of the darkest depths and there seems to be no way out, and you're blinded by your own darkness. And for me, that was a very real moment, very tangible, um, and something I will never forget. And so, in processing it, it came out in paint. And this painting was built up in layers. So, the first layer of the painting, which is now covered over, is of a woman who is in a state of despair, and she's naked and hopeless in a broken room. And once I had painted that, um, it was like a complete painting, but it wasn't done. I knew it wasn't done, and I knew that creating this piece would be part of my process of healing. So I put it to the side for many years, and it was only, maybe 8 or 10 years later when I developed insight into why I ended up in that darkness, that I could find my way out. And the painting came out again, and I started working on it some more. And what the turning point for me was a realization that that darkness was a prison of my own making. It was constructed of the lies, the narratives, or, some of them are truths, but they become calcified and definitions of where we can and can't tread in our own purpose and journey. For me, it had a lot to do with being a woman and not feeling like I could be myself in in a man's world, needing to put on masks and show up in ways that were not authentic to me. And once I had this flash of insight, what came over me was an urge to write it all down, to give voice to that narrative that I had never given voice to, not even to my own self. And so I pulled out paper and pens and frantically, in a state of meditation, just wrote and wrote and wrote and wrote my heart out. And I did not read what I wrote, but in getting it out, I felt like I'd put it all on the page. And when I felt like there was nothing left of this broken narrative, I then ripped the pieces of paper into strips and pulled out my old canvas and started applying these strips in what is evocative of prison bars to symbolize the way in which the prison I'd constructed for myself, this place of darkness, was built out of my own words, my own stories, my own narratives. And that in reality, while this painting is a snapshot of a place I don't want to return to, it's also a reminder that the prisons we find ourselves in are of our own making. And the way out is through dismantling the narratives, most of them imposed from outside, many of them internalized, of patriarchy, oppression, colonization, which certainly I do not feel to the extent that those that are oppressed, much more than me, feel and live every day. And so one of the evolutions of this piece is I've brought it now into digital art so that I can share kind of the unfoldment of its evolution, which gets lost in the paintings I've done that have layers and layers of paint that obscure the original image. And so here is an animation in digital art of this piece. Thank you so much for listening to my story. If you'd like to learn more about my artwork, you can visit my website, ariabadian.com, and check out my prints of this and other pieces.